All right, welcome back. We're in Chapter 2, Section 8, Solving Absolute Value Equations and Inequalities. In this video, we're going to be solving absolute value equations. Before we get to that, we have to talk about absolute value. What does that mean? Absolute value for numbers is just a way of describing what we call the magnitude of the number, which is a fancy way of saying how far the number is on a number line from zero. Is it far away from zero? The reason why is because we know that like negative 1,000 is a very, very, very small number, but the magnitude of it relative to other negative numbers is big. That's really confusing to say it that way. So if we think about it, it'd be like, well, how far on a number line do you have to go to get from 0 to negative 1,000? Well, that'd be the same distance if you went from 0 in the other direction to get to 1,000. One thing to keep in mind is that the positive and negative just simply refers to direction, all right? And a lot of things where we use positive and negative, it means the same thing too. So like, you know, pretty soon it's going to be winter time in Minnesota and we're going to be getting temperatures that are going to be below zero. Okay, 0 on the Fahrenheit scale is kind of irrelevant. Not irrelevant, that's not the word I'm looking for. There's no scientific reason why there's a 0 there. For the metric scale, 0 is easy. It's where the temperature that water freezes. As you measure your temperature with your thermometer, you can see as it gets cold, it's going one direction, and as it warms up, it goes the other direction. The negatives and positives just refer to the direction that you're going. So when we look at a number line, like I did in the previous video, positive goes to the right, negative goes to the left. Absolute value is just a way of saying, okay, no matter what direction you're going, how far are you going, right? Now, previously, you probably have done things like this. What's the absolute value of 7? Well, you probably learned that the absolute value of a positive number just equals that number. It stays positive. And maybe you know what's the absolute value of negative 19. And you know that if I take the absolute value of a negative number, then I drop the negative and I just end up with a positive. And what's the absolute value of 0? Well, that's just going to be 0. So absolute value of every positive number is going to be positive. Absolute value of every negative number, I switch the sign and get a positive. And absolute value of 0 is 0. That's the unique one that will come up every now and then. So if I look at these examples that I stole from the book, the absolute value of 5 equals 5, the absolute value of negative 5 equals 5. All right? And one way you can describe it is the absolute value of x is going to be x, the same thing, if x is positive or 0, like these two. Or it's going to be the opposite of x, and you can say negative x. Negative means opposite, no matter what Miss Ader, my own high school math teacher, said. Negative means opposite. So it equals negative x if x is already negative. So a negative of a negative would be a positive, or the opposite of a negative would be a positive. This one gets a little confusing. Another way that I've seen it explained is that the absolute value of x is equal to the positive square root of the number squared. So if the number is already positive, squaring it makes it positive, and taking the square root is still positive. But if the number is negative, squaring it makes it positive. A negative times a negative is a positive, and then taking the principal square root leaves the positive one. This one involves us talking about what that symbol means, so it's more efficient way to describe it, but it's a little confusing at this level. But if you kept up with what I said, all right. This doesn't get us towards solving equations, though. What we are going to do is this. Inside of the absolute value bars, I'm going to put my unknown, my variable, my number that is hidden from you right now. And I'm going to tell you that this is going to equal something, like it might equal 23. So what do I take the absolute value of and I get 23? Well, based upon what I know, if I take the absolute value of a positive, I get a positive. So I get x could equal 23. The absolute value 23 does equal 23. That works. Check mark. But I also could say x could equal negative 23, because the absolute value of negative 23 also equals 23. That works. I should write that over here. So here's the deal with these. I'm going to get two solutions as I solve these equations. And I have to be able to set it up correctly in order to do this. And it'll become more important when we get into the inequality stuff, because that's going to be the next video. But for all of these, you cannot have a number that's equal to two numbers, all right? So I use the word or to say it could be this or it could be that. These are two different numbers. All right, let's do a couple things here. So, absolute value equations and inequalities. If I have the absolute value of an unknown and it equals a number, that thing could be the opposite of that number or that number. We'll get to the less than or greater than in a moment. So I'm going to hide this. Actually, I have this in all my videos that I'm going to be showing you. Okay? So we're just going to be focusing on this. And there's one important step that I'm going to write, and I'm going to make sure I mention it every time. It's the thing that, for all this stuff that seems difficult, most students usually don't have a problem with it. Where they make a mistake is they forget to do this. I have to isolate the absolute value expression first. If it's already isolated, no problem. But if it's not, you have to take care of that first. All right? Let's do this one. So I have an equal sign. The equal sign shows me the left side and the right side. And sometimes we even draw a line through it so that we can see the left side and right side. On the left side, everything is inside of the absolute value bars. So this is already isolated. So I'm good. I can start by breaking this apart and solving. Before I do that, I want to show you this one. I'm showing them side by side. The plus 5 is outside of the absolute value bars. So this one I have to isolate, and isolate means get by itself, the absolute value of 3x first. So I'll show you how to do that. But while we're looking at them side by side, this one, the absolute value is by itself on the side where the equal sign is in the middle. This one has a plus 5 with it. I'm going to get to that in a second. Since this one's already isolated, I'm going to split it. Now remember, what's inside, I'm going to cover it with my thumb. What's inside here is either going to be 5, because the absolute value of 5 equals 5, or it's going to be negative 5. So x minus 7 could equal 5. Or x minus 7 could equal negative 5. So again, what's in the absolute value bars, I'm going to cover it with my thumb, is going to be 5 or negative 5. Well, what did I cover? I did the x minus 7. So the x minus 7 could be 5, or the x minus 7 could be negative 5. Now I'm going to solve. I'm going to add 7 to both sides. I'm going to x equals 12. I'm going to add 7 to both sides. And I'm going to get x equals positive 2. Negative 5 plus 7 equals positive 2. That's it. You're done. For this problem, this group of problems, the directions are not going to say graph it. Because if you graphed it, all you would do is draw a number line and you make a dot at 12 and a dot at 2. That seems a little trivial. So you don't really need to graph that one. Let's move on to the second problem. Now, I mentioned this when I was introducing the problems. The plus 5 I have to take care of first. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. And I get the absolute value of 3x equals 9. Now I'm going to say, what is it? I'm going to cover it with my thumb. I know my arm's in the way. Do this. What is under my finger right there? Well, if I take the absolute value of it and I get 9, the numbers that I take the absolute value of and get 9 are going to be 9 or negative 9. So 3x could be 9, or 3x could equal negative 9. Do some division. I get x equals 3, or x equals negative 3. Now, I'm not going to write it because, again, I'm going to take a picture of this later so you can look at it, and I don't want it to be confusing. Do not write absolute value of 3x plus 5 equals 14, absolute value of 3x plus 5 equals negative 14. That's the mistake that a lot of students do when they get it wrong. Remember to isolate the absolute value part first. We'll do a couple more and then I'll end this video. For this problem, on the left side of the equal sign, I've got absolute value of x plus 9. Nothing outside of it. Good. On the right side, I just get 13. So this one's already isolated. Skipping over to looking at this problem before I finish this one, the negative 8 I have to take care of first before I can split it. This one is ready to be split. What do I take the absolute value of and I get 13? Well, x plus 9 could equal positive 13 because the absolute value of 13 equals 13. Or x plus 9 could also equal negative 13. Subtract 9 from both sides and I get x equals 4. Subtract 9 from both sides and I get x equals negative 22. Yeah. And that's my solution. Hopefully I didn't invade my space over here too much. Now for this one, I have to get rid of this negative 8 first. So I got the absolute value of 6x, minus 8 equals 22. First thing I do is I add 8 to both sides, and I get the absolute value of 6x equals 30. Do not do absolute value of 6x minus 8 equals 22 or negative 22. You have to get the absolute value bar, the absolute value expression by itself first. Since it's isolated now, I move the 8 over to the other side. I get 6x equals 30, or 6x equals negative 30. Divide by 6, x equals 5, or x equals negative 5. Now I want you to notice something, okay? Sometimes you do get a number and its opposite. Oftentimes you don't. Don't automatically assume that if you get one, that the other answer is just going to be the opposite of that. I've seen that on test too. Students will work half of it. They'll say x equals 4, so the other one has to be negative 4. That's not the way it rolls, all right? So please make sure you show all of your work, you show all of your steps, so that you are not messing it up, I suppose. All right, see you in the next video.